Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Carlton People. We're flocking through these now that season 2024 is here and well and truly here. Now, today we're going to hear from Adam. So many angles. I think a lot of you actually seen Adam without seeing Adam, if that makes sense. But nonetheless, Adam, welcome to Carlton People, mate.
Thanks, mate. It's an honour to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Let's begin. Let's begin how we always begin. Because I've seen your work for a while now. I've been familiar with you for a while, but I don't actually know your story. So how in the world did you become a Carlton supporter?
I guess, having watched a few episodes of Carlton People along the way, you sort of hear about people like dad forced it on me or something like that, or family of Carlton supporters. No Carlton supporters in my family. My dad migrated from India, so has no interest in footy. Mum's a Geelong supporter, so I'm born and bred down here. But 93 grand finals, my earliest memory. Very glad I didn't pick the Bombers on grand final day that year. Went with the Blues, and I remember Geelong getting flogged when my mum went to the 94 grand final, and it was very satisfying. That whole 95 season, I'll never forget the 20-2. And I was so obsessive, at a really young age, about numbers and stats, and as you can tell by the work I do now. And that was sort of my journey. And then, my whole adult life, we've been fighting to get back to what the footy club was. But a bit different. I was lucky that I got to go to my first Carlton game in 1996. It was Cooter's breakout game against West Coast at Optus. I met a naked Greg Williams in the rooms afterwards. I'll never forget the smell of the rooms. It was just deep heat. I guess my path's a little bit unique. No one in the family supports the same club. It's a bit strange, I suppose.
I mean, my mum's the same. She was in a family. Grandfather was Essendon, uncle was Collingwood, and she just didn't want to be either of the two. So something drew her to Carlton. So you mentioned the 93 grand final is one of your earliest memories, and what you picked Carlton around about that time?
That's all I can remember. Yeah. So I went with the Blues from there, and that was really it. And then I was the only Carlton supporter down in Geelong. Everyone this is a Geelong town. It's really strange to go for someone else than you going through school. And I was in high school when Carlton's downturn started. So always wore the navy blue proudly, but it was tough never beating Geelong. So naturally they're the team I dislike the most. I don't know. It's just how it went. And Greg Williams and Cooter were my favourites growing up. Obviously Sticks and whatnot, but there was my first jumper was a diesel jumper. I've still got it actually, funnily enough. But it's just part of my journey.
Mm-hmm. So you're a young adult by the time salary cap era happens. Really unique experience to have as a supporter, probably at your age as well. What do you remember from then, like the turn of the century?
Oh, all I remember from the turn of the century is just copying it flat out as Carlton's, as we get charged with everything. And, the end of the John Elliott era, ending in the fashion that it did. And then it's like when you black out through a rough period, right? You black out bad memories in your mind, or you block them out. I think it's very similar in that vein. You remember a few high points, but the 2000s, it felt like, and I think it's really good timing with what's happened with Feb's induction into the Hall of Fame. I remember watching Channel 10 and just hoping for something good to come out of a day like that. You'd chuck on a Saturday Arvo game, and whether it was playing Essendon, I think it was the rivalry games more than anything else, hoping just for a surprise. I think your entire, in my case, as a young adult, it's damage limitation game to game. Let's not get done by 10 goals. Let's make it competitive. And I guess that's really it. You were just hoping for Feb to do something later, Juddy, Murph, things like that. You were just hoping for little rays of hope.
Yeah, man, I remember being shocked and stunned when the Judd Murphy, Gibbs, Cruiser era didn't go further than the second round of the finals. I just remember thinking like we had done the punishment, we'd gone through the rebuild, got the picks in, and I remember like being so stunned when it all when the realization came that this was not going to happen for us. Um, I don't know. In hindsight now, which it's always great to have it, we still probably weren't ready as a club. We didn't fully evolve with that rebuild one, we'll call it.
Yeah, I think what we've realised, obviously, is that like you just assume because you're a big club, things are going to happen, or when you've done your turn down the bottom of the ladder, things are going to happen. But it doesn't work out that way. I think as like modern sports evolved, everyone has to be pulling in the same direction, focused on the same goal. To be an elite sporting organisation, it took Carlton so long to go past the big name hire, the big player acquisition, things like that. And I think like what you're saying about like the Cruiser Gibbs Murph era, it's like, oh, finally it's going to be over. And I think we're still undoing the conditioning of it's all going to go wrong. Like, this year even is a good example. When Weeders got injured, I remember like lots of people commenting on things that I'd post that like we're not. I remember in the Melbourne preseason game, it's like we're not going to win a game without Weeders. But we're just like that's what we're. I think it's like takes an understanding. It's like that's what we're conditioned to do. Like when
Yeah.
you have 2 decades of repeated like behavioral therapy that your club is going to find a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. It's going to take a while to undo that. It might take until a certain grand final day when the siren finally goes to undo that.
I hope not, because I feel like we'd be having a big section of the community that misses out on the journey to get to the granny and then win it. And I don't know, like I've been speaking to people lately, and people have like sort of made comments like, "Oh, like you're a lot more positive now than what you used to be, and you're really pushing this narrative." I'm like, I'm not pushing anything. I'm just happy with what I'm seeing because it's for me. I'm born in '91. What I've seen in the last, what do we say, like 25, 20 games, we'll call it 15, 20 games. It's the best run I've ever experienced. I don't think I've ever been this genuinely excited about the club ever.
Yeah, well, it makes complete sense, right? Michael Foster's got the best coaching record of any coach in your like in the majority of your lifetime beyond David Parkins. So I think it just takes a while. Like it feels really nice to have like a real identity as a football club. I don't feel like we've had that for a long time. It's like it's always been the Carlton of old. We'll get back to the Carlton of old, but what is that today? And like to have a team that's like really to have a team that plays this tough, contested, like they're a really hard team to beat. They will make you earn it, and that's such a good feeling now. Like, and even in the first few games of this year, back end of last, you have this team that's going to keep coming and coming and coming. It's so refreshing, and it's I can understand why you've had the positive turn because I sort of like we're talking about the journey, right? You don't want to miss out on the journey. Like I'm all about that. Like you don't want to get too high, you don't want to get too low. But every time we have a high, I want to make the most of that. And that's not
Yeah.
about like giving it to the supporters. I want to like to opposition supporters. I want to relish the moments that we've waited for. Whether it's the win against Melbourne or just pulling out a home and away game that we weren't supposed to win up in Brisbane. I want to make the most of that. I don't think it means like I hate Carlton thinks they've won a premiership in March rhetoric. It's not that. It's just I think Carlton supporters are feeling like this real gratefulness to feel like a footy club again. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel like this is an interesting question for anyone if I had have asked it 18 months ago, but what are your core Carlton memories? The ones that you would say, you probably mentioned one earlier with Diesel and like the grand final in 94, but what are your core memories that sort of make up your experience as a Carlton supporter?
Definitely 95. I think just that run. I'll never forget. It's really weird to remember having the memory as a 7-year-old of beating Geelong in the rain by 10 goals on grand final day. I'll never forget watching that. Like I think it's talking about the moments where you remember where you were. I remember watching the 99 prelim with some family friends who are Collingwood supporters, and finally had them on my side for a change because we were playing Essendon. The elimination final. against Richmond. I went and watched that with my housemate at the time, um, at the pub, and she was absolutely giving it to me at halftime. You know, torture journey of her own, and then they just Richmond that second half. Um, yeah, I think those. I think when Juddy won his Brownlow, I think like it's nice that Brownlow night is not one of the highlights of the season anymore. It's just another night. It's not about the individual sort of accolade moments anymore. Um, Although I must say, when Cripper won his, that was like a really I don't know. That felt like a little different. I guess like because Cripper's been on the journey with the fans the last decade. Um, and I and then I think that the Melbourne final for me is a core memory. Um, I remember just being in like I've never had that sort of disbelief, like, oh, we're going to a prelim, we're going to a
Yeah.
prelim. Um, yeah, I guess those are the core ones. They're pretty typical of a Carlton supporter, I suppose. I must say, when we beat Geelong during COVID, that was really nice. But because we never played down in Geelong because Carlton's a bigger club. But that was really disappointing. I remember watching that. I was with some friends. I remember it was when you were allowed to have like 6 people around, and we had some people around for someone's birthday, and they're all Geelong supporters watching in lounge room. I was like, I can't watch it with you. I watched it in my bedroom, and I was like, it's so annoying. I can't watch this with all my Geelong mates who weren't there that night. Didn't absolutely give it to them, like at the game. Yeah, probably those, I would say. It's I have to apologize. I can't think of a heap off the cuff, but
No,
maybe
that's
I've
plenty.
repressed a lot.
No, that's plenty. Um, the facelift or the transformation of the club. What do you? I mean, you remember old Carlton, and you are now living through New Carlton. How do you summarize where we're at now, and of the organization as a whole?
I think it was like a real change, and I think the mentality is the biggest part. Um, and Vossi and Cookie and Luke Sayers have spoken about this a lot, and I think humbling ourselves as a footy club and knowing that every single thing is earned, and we have to like Vossi's constantly mentioned earning the right. And we're like, so I guess it's we're not entitled to anything because we're Carlton. Our success in our not recent history, but our long history doesn't guarantee us anything. The fact that we can attract certain players as a bigger club doesn't mean anything at all. I think the change in tone um, and sort of we finally accepted where we were as a footy club. It wasn't just like it's yeah, nothing is going to be given to us. I think the way Vossi, I think you can say a lot of things, and I think Carlton fans used to get really upset with like David Teague's press conferences because they felt like it was just empty words. And I think under previous regimes, it was always the same. But I think we've got a footy club now that's really true to their word. I like obviously I absorb a lot of Carlton content, but when I watch player presses or executive presses, coaches presses, I really believe and buy into what they're saying. It doesn't feel like these sort of box ticking exercises as presses, and I think it's really demonstrative that we do as we say as we do, and um, it's probably the biggest illustration of the change that, and I really think we've got key appointments in place. I know that a lot of people were frustrated with the review, and it's always hard to judge a review immediately after the fact. When you might have assumed certain people are going to lose their jobs and things like that. But I think the review's really been justified in the time since. Sometimes it's like when a player's traded or we acquire someone like the Adam Chera trade got judged very harshly in the first year because of Jai Miss's success is the same sort of thing. But sometimes you have to wait a little while to see the fruits of your labour, and I think we've seen that in the couple of years since. They stuck fat after how 2022 ended and got the rewards in 2023. Not the ultimate reward, but the first steps towards something bigger.
Mm.
Yeah, I think just having again coming back to that strong identity. Corporate plans sound wordy and dumb, but once you see them fleshed out in what we're doing and really living true to our values, um, yeah, I think it's really impressive.
Mm. Now, I'm not sure exactly when it began for you, but, Up the Baggers, the Up the Baggers era for you, how did it start? I think I know why it started, but maybe share with us the journey of that and what you do.
Yeah, so used to be a journalist right out of uni, and gave that away. It's a, as you know, the media landscape is very different. I was working in overseas sports and decided that, yeah, just financially, and wanted to provide. Like, I was recently married, wanted to provide for my family more than I was doing, and a couple of years later, um, just got an itch I couldn't scratch, and I get frustrated constantly. I'm a bit of a cynic with the sports media landscape. I think that, yeah, I think fans could be so much more well informed. I guess that was the rough idea about the baggers. I didn't know how it was going to go with where AFL Twitter was at the time, but a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes, hopefully becoming lessons learned. Um, yeah, and meeting, like, you meet a lot of people. Like, you and I developed a relationship out of that. Really close with, people like Pommy, and yeah, you just it's just been a really strange, not what I would have expected sort of journey to happen. Um, but yeah, just turning passion into a bit more of a something I spend my spare time with. It's really rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a function that is so I mean, I remember when I first noticed what you were doing, and it clicked for me straight away. Like, you're aggregating all the news articles about the club into one place. I'm like, genius. I don't know why it's taken people so long to seemingly realize what it is you're doing, but for me, I know for me personally, both as a supporter and then also for the work we do on the channel, like we have, the Media Watch show now, like I come to you, like I come to your Twitter account, and like that's where we source a lot of the articles to pull up on screen, and it's just there's it just goes to show, I think, how many different functions make up providing to the Carlton community. And I think there's even more that probably haven't even been discovered yet that will in time when it comes to, as technology advances and, more things become available to us. But I know from my lens, it's certainly helped me stay informed and really just I know where to go if I want to see where the articles are.
Well, yeah, I think for me, I was reading that stuff anyway, so it's self-serving in a way, just to aggregate it. But you always notice, like, if it's a Fox Footy tweet or something from SEN in particular, they'll grab the juiciest part of it. And it sometimes it's not even really the angle on what the person was saying. And even sometimes when I'm aggregating it, say I transcribe a press conference, you sometimes don't pick up the tone, which is why I've been moving a little bit more into posting video content to give people full scope. Like, so obviously still experimenting. Sometimes I do summaries so people can get a quicker quicker look at it. It's just a bit of, yeah, better way to. Just think context matters, and I think
Yeah.
the way I think there is an unfair pressure on the media, and not such as the media, but the organisations themselves, because they're always looking for ways to streamline processes. Like, you were pointing out on Media Watch the other week, I loved about the AI thing, which is a suspicion I've had of how they've been writing articles. This is something that's happened with Sports Illustrated overseas, where they've laid off their staff and just gone the AI route. Yeah, I just think there's a way that fans can better inform themselves, and I think that's through the work that you guys do as well. I think we're finding with fan coverage that fans who watch their team all the time and delve in, it's 100% their focus. They can provide better opinions and analysis than people who are just taking champion data work from their producers and maybe don't watch every single minute of every single game, because that's a really hard task too, I might add. I think there's a real place for fan content. I think the Carlton community is really lucky. There's a variety of podcasts and now video content. I mean, look at all the stuff on Blue Abroad. it gives fans the best opportunity to really stay informed, so that when those media narratives come up, and sorry for the long spiel,
Mate, I
um,
love it.
um, it's like, well, no, actually, this isn't true. Like sometimes they get it right, and sometimes they don't apologize. Like what you were saying about Lloydie on Media Watch, he demonstrated with like video content what he was talking about. Yes, he didn't apologize, he didn't completely back down, but at least he was demonstrating what he was talking about. And I think it's finding the shades of grey, because I think we get too caught up in the black and white, and there's a lot more to it. So I guess while it's not a perfect science by any means, I'm still trying to figure it all out. Yeah, it's something we can add.
Yeah. I just find it, I mean, clearly, I mean, I just find the whole landscape so fascinating. I still remember the very beginning before this channel existed. I remember the experience. I mean, we'll play, we sucked. You know, we would lose most games, and we would wait for Monday night on the couch or 360, and we'd wait for that little, we were lucky because we're a big club that draws attention. And so we'd get 2 minutes of coverage from Robbo on the, you know, all the boys on the couch. And I just remember, like, it was so clear to me. I'm like, is that it? Is that all we get all week? Like, and then, you know, what if you're Freo, or what if you're Port Adelaide? You know, you don't get as much coverage just because there is that interstate, um, there is that thing with the interstate teams that they don't get as much love as the others, seemingly anyway, from my view. And I think what's also happened is you've got this, the distribution of the content and the platforms has been completely decentralized. So what used to be, you could only get your information from the paper or only from these TV shows on the networks. Like all of a sudden, anyone can be a media network. Like anyone can do it. Anyone can start it. Not necessarily anyone can do it, but anyone can technically start it and then, you know, build some sort of a content machine. That's kind of the world we live in now. We've gone from, you know, industrial age to digital age, and now I think we're playing in this information age where we're trying to figure out what's right from wrong.
Yeah, I think we're definitely in this, at least in the AFL media landscape, where we're trying to fight media narratives with like an appetite for information. Like you've probably seen, I get a little frustrated with a lack of statistical access. So I know I feel like champion data is a dirty term in AFL Twitter, because there's a hesitance to get involved in like deeper statistics. But I think that's because we don't have access to them. So I think there's an appetite from fans to learn more and get the full information. Like you can see the success of what fan channels do, and like there's a good response to up the baggers for the majority, um, because people want to learn, but it's wading through all the crap to get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're still in the middle of that battle, and unfortunately, because of there's so much out there, and sometimes the negative gets highlighted. Like Kane and Sam McClure, and probably the people who like Robbo, who get tarred as probably the biggest critics because they go hard with their opinions. They take so much of the focus that there is really good work if you look for it. Like one of my favorite segments is the AFL 360 watch list, first crack. There is real stuff that teaches fans, like Daniel Hoyne on from Champion Data on Sports Day, but it's wading through a sea of, I don't know if I can swear on the channel, but
Yeah.
a sea of shit to get to what's good. And sometimes that can be a problem with what I'm posting, is you can post so much stuff because you want everyone to be informed that they can
Mm.
miss the good stuff too. So sometimes I'm trying to order it to leave the good stuff till last, or yeah, it's a bit of a tricky exercise. So I think that's the
Yeah.
battle we're in at the moment. Yeah,
Yeah. And you know, there's this other part. I mean, this is what I've learned over the journey. I mean, I think when I started, it was, I mean, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. There's no template. There was no blueprint. There was no one before me to like watch. And I was watching, you know, the fan channels in Europe, whether it was the Arsenal fan channel, Liverpool, Manchester United. I was just fascinated by the fact that people had built something talking about their own sports club who they love. And that culture is a little different. And also, I was very emotive. Whereas now I think there's such an importance that needs to be put on being a bit more practical. Because I think what I learned, particularly in the last year, while cooler heads prevailing is what actually leads you to, evolving and becoming better. Um, and that's the challenge because, the dirty little secret of content is the more controversial you are, toxic you are, the more people are going to tune in. And I don't know if that's the fault of the content creator or creators, or if it's a society issue, because we love to tune in to, like, if there's a scandal or if there's gossip or if there's something with a negative connotation. We as human beings seem to love it.
Yeah, I think we talk about tall poppy syndrome in Australia, but I think it's just something about people in positions of success. Societally, we seem to enjoy their downfall.
Yeah.
And I think it's what you said. You and I have talked about this offline because I very much got sucked into, particularly early days, is miring in that negativity. Whereas I find that doesn't serve me as a fan. So I've really tried to push that positivity. You still make mistakes. I made plenty of mistakes in my journalism career, just not having a thick enough skin with trolls and people in my mentions or people who would DM me and things like that. But that's how you learn. Like there's no template. You can't follow the same path as
Hmm.
everyone. You have to sort of borrow from people you admire. I've certainly lent on you and Pommy through learning how to just channel my energies better. Like there's just things you learn and borrow from everyone. Even the way the girls now, the besties, they really are taking seriously their responsibility of being young female content creators, and that's such a challenging thing. So it's like what you were saying as well about overseas. Like the aggregation idea comes from the fact that we have so many aggregators in European football. And I was friends with a Manchester United one from my journalism days, and I sort of just talked their ear off early days on how they approached it. So yeah, I think it's like I think you aren't bound to your mistakes. We all make them.
Yeah, of
It's how
course.
you learn from them, and I know that's what I'm still trying to do. So yeah, I think that's sort of been my approach to how I operate up the baggers and what I try to put out there. And once you get that good feedback that people think you're doing the right job. Sorry about my dog in the background.
It's okay.
Yeah, once you get that good feedback, you sort of know you're getting it mostly right, and you just keep trying to build on that.
Yeah. You reminded me when you were talking about Manchester United. You're a Manchester United fan. I've seen some things about, I mean, I've noticed this as well, not just from you, but I've noticed the frustration build up with the United stand. I mean, you have a lot of experience on this topic. So, as someone who's gone through the traditional media route, and now someone who really understands this new wave of independent, fan content, what do you think the biggest lessons that we can learn in footy fan channels that you've watched from Manchester United and United stand?
Yeah, anyone who follows me knows that Mark and I aren't friends. That stems back to my journalism days. Um, but I think fan channels just have this responsibility to set the tone for their fan bases. I think particularly young fans take lead from the people they admire in the community. And
Yeah.
I think anyone with a half decent platform. And I think sometimes people don't understand this when you talk about it on your own platforms, is that there is a responsibility that comes with that. You have influence on it over other people, whether you like it or not, and your behavior can influence so many people. Just like if you get personal with a player as opposed to criticizing the performance, like someone didn't have a good game, and instead you don't focus on that. It's just like you get really personal with them. That then sets the tone for how other people are going to behave, and that's obviously something I've pushed a lot myself, and I just think, yeah, because fan channels operate a little bit differently because there isn't that same. They don't have the same people to report to. I think when you have a little
Hmm.
bit more freedom, and that means you can be critical of the industry itself and the game in a different way because you don't have the same sort of reporting line. But it is dangerous, and I think when the Carlton supporter abused the Carlton players last year, obviously I was very vocal about that. And people like this happens all the time in European football and stuff. And I was like, that doesn't make it okay. Like it's not an example to follow. Like justification doesn't help. Um, so I think we can really set the tone for. I think like the AFL, whether it's media or fandom, like we have an opportunity to be better than our predecessors,
Mhm.
um, and not go like I know like American sports. If you look at media coverage there, it's like First Take is the biggest show in America. We don't, and I know that Kane Corns has spoken about eventually wanting to have a show and a platform like that. We should be pretty wary of going down that route because, like, we're already seeing media members having personal feuds with players. It's not too long before the media members, and we're already seeing it, becoming the story themselves. Whereas we don't have that much TV access as to probably what we should. There isn't enough analysis as already, where it becomes the stories aren't about the footy anymore. And as you said, there's a Vic bias. We probably don't have enough time to cover all the clubs. We've got another club coming. Um, we've got an opportunity, and I think Media Watch is good for this to keep things on track, hold the media accountable, hold ourselves accountable too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I always try to do that when I've posted info in the past it's not correct or just get something wrong. I try to apologize because you're setting a tone for other people. So or just misinforming them. So I try to remind myself of that, even though my progress is not linear on it. It's an opportunity to keep bettering ourselves.
Mate, game of life. Just keep stumbling and fucking up until you somehow figure it out, you know?
That's it. Same
Yeah,
approach.
yeah. I think, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, if they're talking about BA, like, oh, like people will look at it now. It's like literally took, I don't think I really figured it out. I don't even think I really have yet, but I reckon the first 3 years was literally just littered with mistakes, you know? But I think the difference for me, what I noticed is I'm not trying to be an expert. I'm trying to facilitate discussion. That's where I think the magic will come moving forward. We put these people on pedestals, and society is a funny thing because like we'll ride them and build them up, and then they'll get a little bit too successful, and then we'll absolutely chip away at them and bring them down. I'm really aware of that, and I am not a footy expert. I just love the game. I love it more than anything. I love talking about it. I love learning about it. Um, it's just a really funny thing we have in. I don't know if it's just Australian society, but I can only talk on Australian society. But yeah, we're an interesting bunch.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes we think it's Australia, but I think, whether it's the UK or America, it's pretty shared. It's just that
Mm,
we're sometimes so siloed to our own experience. I think even if you look at sometimes the way we judge Carlton and certain things like club communications, from what I've seen with other clubs, we're not the only ones that get frustrated. Like there's just some things we're not privy to, and it's just the
yeah,
way it goes sometimes.
yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about the Carlton Football Club, how do you view what's happening with this group, and what do you think about us, as a collective, moving forward and where the team's at?
I think there's two sides to the coin with the first couple of games. Obviously, stunning comeback against Brisbane, but the first quarter. But from my point of view, that was more just a brilliant first quarter by Brisbane. Probably the best quarter of footy all year that we've seen from anyone. Then against Richmond, I thought it was really impressive to back up from what was an emotionally draining performance and then fallout with Doc's injury. I think we're adding strings to our bow. So I can see that the team is probably clearly, and Vossi's spoken about the physical peaking and the physical plan that they've had pre-buy. They've taken a longer approach on the season. We're seeing that with the cautiousness on injuries, but adding more to that turnover game is massive for us. And I think we've got so many ball users who can start defensive 50 chains and back half chains, whether it's Boydie, Sardi, Zach Williams, Nick Newman, Mitch McGovern, like so many different weapons that we're going to be more than just a contested side and clearance beast. And once Walsh gets back, our contest work will get better. It takes pressure off everyone else, and I think it's pretty exciting. Like because we're getting things we're ticking off little boxes, but we can get so much better.
Yeah.
So GWS and Sydney are setting the pace at the moment, but we know it's not a sprint. As we learned in 2022, things can fall apart pretty quickly, and you want to play the long game. I mean, that might mean Sammy Walsh isn't back for until he's absolutely ready, and that's fine. Same with Weeders if he doesn't play this week. Um, it's not about this week; it's about how he's shaping up come September. So I think it's a really exciting time. It's nice to have. I think you just embrace the expectations.
Hmm.
Like I don't miss like what we are speaking about earlier with damage limitations. I don't miss hoping we lose by a small amount as opposed to a big one. I want to win every single game. I expect us to. Well, we have a puncher's chance in every single game. We know that now. So yeah, it's really exciting. It's really exciting, and it's cool to see um, that optimism again. I think it's probably taken until that finals campaign for more fan buy-in, and I think you can see that with like season predictions, and I'm sure you see plenty on the fan cams and stuff. Um, I don't mind a little bit of blind belief sometimes. Sometimes it's good for you. I don't mind that. I don't mind being enough sometimes. That's just what we are. Um, I think yeah, it's just a really exciting time. I don't think we've ever had a list quite like this. In my adult life, it's the best list we've had since '95, and um, yeah, it's nice to know anything's possible with the group.
Yeah. Just going back on what you just said there about like supporting blindly, I think at some point over the last 2 seasons, I've had a bit of a realization myself. I mean, early days, I used to like really hammer home this whole thing like it's more than a game, which it is, and I still believe that it is more than a game because of what the game brings for people and their enjoyment and life, and economically and just socially, and what it does for the country, and but lately, in the last couple of years, I've actually realized like this whole thing that we dedicate so much emotion into is all a fantasy. Like it's a game, made up rules that constantly evolve over time. Like it's one giant fantasy that we all care about so much and live vicariously through so much. And so one of my next questions is, when it comes to Carlton, like we obviously have something. There's an essence about the club which draws so much passion. There are a couple of clubs that have it, but what is it about Carlton, in your view, that makes us care more than seemingly anything else in life?
Um, well, that's a really good question. I would say in modern times, and why you see people talking about Carlton, like the attendances we're getting now, and things like that, is because we've had to wait a really long time. And I think
Mm,
um, something really important in my everyday life is gratefulness, and I think that Carlton fans really appreciate being back where we are. Um, I have never, like, I've been to a lot of games in my life, and I've never experienced anything like the passion after the Melbourne win. Um, even the wins late in the year when we beat Collingwood and we beat Melbourne. Um, I just think people really relish it in a different way when you've had to go. It's like not having water in the desert. When you finally get it, there is just something about that. And I just think, yeah, I think we've just had to wait a really long time, and I think that changes things. Maybe it's a bit of European passion, based on the majority of our fan base and the demographic, that adds a little bit more spice to it. But yeah, I don't know exactly what it is. I think maybe it's just a hunger that we've just been malnourished for a little while, and we're so grateful to be back.
yeah, it may. Like, I'd like to consider myself as someone that thinks critically about things, and I think I am. And then I have this part of me that is just so obsessed with this game, this fantasy, because that's ultimately what it is. But it brings me joy. It brings me joy more than anything. I haven't really been able to explain it. I guess at some point over the next X amount of years, maybe I'll be able to figure it out. But it's just amazing. Like going to a game, whether you're at the game or watching at home, just the whole lot is just so fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what it is. I think I'm better at not letting it ruin my week as opposed to my couple of days. It might ruin my, like, if Carlton lose on a Friday night, it's going to ruin my weekend. But I think I'm better at knowing where it sits. Like, it might
Yeah,
be
yeah.
just logging out after a game and getting better at that the last couple of years. But there's just something about it. Yeah, you can't quite explain it. I just try to make sure I make the most of the highs because we've waited so long for them. Yeah, just take a moment sometimes to savor it.
Absolutely. All right, I've got a couple more before I let you go. We are early in the season, so I will ask for some sort of a prediction here. This answer's changed, but I don't know if it has for you. Who do you think will win the BNF in 2024?
Um, I think Jacob Wiedering could still win it with his importance to the back line. You could find a halfback like Sardi could win it. I think he's been close in previous years. I mean, Harry Mackay. It's not with a different role. The cool thing about it is that your automatic answer isn't Patrick Cripps. I'd love him to win another one for history's sake.
Yeah.
But I think I think there's just so many contenders now. Like, I haven't even mentioned Adam Sarah. Um, yeah. Uh, there's just so many contenders, which is a nice change, and it's probably illustrative of the changes at the footy club that we're not just star power.
hmm What about a youngster who hasn't played more than, I don't know, 10 games, who you're looking at and you think that's going to be a key pillar of the group moving forward?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, Elijah Hollins is definitely one. I think we know that based on mutterings out of preseason. I just think he's going to be a bit of a point of difference. But what I like is we have all these wild cards, whether it's Harry Lemmy, Lockie Cowan, boys like that, Ashmoir. There's just all these players. If one of them can get into the senior side, that might just make the difference. We have so many of those players in the team, even older boys like Cunners and Marchie, who haven't been available as much as we'd like. But yeah, younger boys, I'd really like to see the Hollins brothers be bona fide starting 22s, just to see their growth this season, with Ollie going and spending more time inside as opposed to being a solely an outside player, sort of like the development Walshy went through early doors. It's pretty cool to have, when you already have so many options, to have all these extra ones, which just be bonuses this year.
hmm Yeah, I like that. Final question: which year will they lift it up? That beautiful Premiership Cup. Which year will it be?
Um, I've always sort of thought that while Cripper's playing his best footy would need to be the time. So I think if it's not going to be this year, it has to be next year.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, mate, could I just say, got to like 28 minutes and I didn't even like realize. I just blinked. I'm like, where did the time go? That was really good. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for documenting your story, and thanks for what you do and your contribution to the community. It's a help. I know it helps myself. I know it helps other people as well. It's a resource, and all the best with everything.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate the kind words.
Go Blues.
Go Blues.